Excellent. So next we have a presentation by Dom. Dom is a senior InfoSec executive during the day and a social engineer during the night. So he's kind of like a dark superhero of some sort. So he profits from firsthand experience and knowledge of social engineering as an information security professional with 25 years experience. So the name of this talk is Social Engineering for Red Team Attack Vectors. Take it away, Don.
So thanks very much, Kim. So we are back now. I hope everyone is still with me or with us here. And I hope you can actually see the screen now. Is that correct?
Kim, sorted.
Confirm? Fantastic, lovely. So, as you can see, that's probably a bit my journey with this whole quarantine thing and with this technology that is moving to everything virtual, all the conferences. And just right at the beginning, I have to make a little admission. So I think it was about 6 weeks ago when someone, because all the conferences were going virtual, replied to me and said, yeah, look, Dom, are you able to do the conference also virtual? I'm supposed to be in Copenhagen and so on. And I said, yes, of course, I can try. I need to beef up my home equipment for that matter, but I will try. And then somehow later I got the reply, and she was saying to me, based on a question I asked, okay, how do we share and do this and so on, and others can view the content? And she wrote back, yeah, we use Twitch. We are twitching. And to my surprise, as I thought, that's probably a spell correction error. She meant Twitter, because I never heard of Twitch before. So at what level of technology I am currently. And to all the people out there who think they know everything, probably it's not the case. So I'm glad I'm here with you today. Can talk about my favorite topic, social engineering in the context of red teaming, and hope to give you some ideas for your business. And most importantly, how you can better manage your risks in the context of social engineering. I say just at the beginning you saw this little graphic down there, which probably would be the dream of every social engineer if you can impose those settings on everyone involved in social engineering. So read all believing or hold back mode, etc. Of course, that's not possible. I think the biggest risk come actually with humans and with human interaction. And I really don't like the definition of human are the weakest link, because from my point of view, human are actually the strongest link you will ever have. And always keep that in mind. And sometimes I just believe this is a cheap excuse for bad engineering if you tell people are the weakest link. So everyone needs to beef up their game. Social engineering is here, and it's an APT which will not be forgotten. So let's dive into the topic itself. We do have different definitions for social engineering. Of course, mostly in our context, we use the IT security definition for social engineering. There are, I don't know, hundreds, probably thousands of definitions out there around social engineering and what it actually means. Some of them I do really like, some of them I really don't like. And for me, it's basically this elicitation of information from systems, networks, or human beings through method and tools. So for me, the information I'm obtaining, and keep in mind, information is an asset, or data is an asset as such, and also the smallest information is an asset, that every bit counts. And I don't know if this information is, being a problem, if it has been obtained illegally, it can be misused or not. So for me, it's just information what I'm gaining. And of course, I just added the political definition of social engineering as well, because you are social engineered in the way we work, in the daily lives we have. So you get steered as people in a supermarket, for instance, or you get led by advertisements, etc., etc. And we can see this now as well with this COVID applications, which are popping up like mushrooms. Everyone wants to have a tracing app or a tracking app, or what the hell I want to do with that. And under the cover of COVID, it's now fairly easy to bring technology to people, which is sometimes maybe not really necessary. But that's more from a political sense of influencing people in their behavior, in their actions, in what they do, or in their perception of the situation. So everyone believes that maybe for social engineering for a political purpose is being misused at the moment. Down on the right-hand side, you see a little crowbar or chemmy. I think it's been defined or used in the UK. So social engineering is all about finding that little point, that angle point you can set on. And it can be found in many different areas or ways of people. So that's what social engineers actually do. Now, I want to talk to you about what maybe is in your context more important for the red teaming side of things is the attack vectors. So what attack vectors are you using and what attack vectors are out there? Here I just made a little summary of some common attack vectors. So it's, if you look at the picture, it's from bottom left to the top right, it's maybe the standard attack vectors to the highly targeted attack vectors. So we do have, of course, normal phishing, we have spear phishing, which is a bit more targeted, and then we have whaling attacks. We have on there as well eavesdropping, for instance. We have tailgating, baiting, the use of authority as a means for social engineering, impersonation, dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, and many, many, many more. I did also develop this icon pack to actually talk to my clients and with them about what's their goal of the social engineering attack or maybe the red teaming attack. So it needs to be crystal clear, especially in the corporate world where I am working. What are you going to do and why are you going to do? What are the risks associated with your tasks and what's the goal of your tasks? So I think that has become quite clear in the last 25 years I've been working within this area of information security. That's the most important point. You need to learn to speak the business language. It's not enough you talking about your technical capabilities or what you can actually do or about the tools. You need to talk about risk. And I think especially today, where risk tolerance is quite to zero. So companies and corporations are will not allow any risks encompassing, let's say, pen testing and other engagements of this sort within their infrastructure. So you need to find ways around that, or maybe do different testing so you can prove the same thing, but also always keeping in mind what's the reason and what's the purpose of your testing and of your social engineering engagements, of course. On the top right, I'm showing you very quickly. I actually also have planned to give out you some files, which is then the complete information about these attack vectors and their definitions. On the top right, you see advanced highly targeted attack vector. So we do have made, and that's custom made by us, we do have a combination of what has been used in family therapy and some other items, and we do then actually mark a target or collect information about a specific target. But it's not the standard information you can find online. So where is this person connected? Where is this person living? Or where is it working? What certification does this person have? It's about the emotional relations the person have, which then also in due course can, of course, be used as attack vectors. So as you can see on this picture, it's a very simplistic view of actually what we do with this called SER maps, social and emotional response maps. It's the target person is in the middle, that's Chris, which is 45. And this is a mapping you can do in the field, or this is also a mapping you can do within a meeting. Also, what I'm showing you is what you typically have if you're sitting in a meeting. You have your decision makers there, your key stakeholders, and then it's about making a decision. And then, of course, on one hand, you have the usual organizational chart of this company or of this setting, and then you have the unofficial organizational chart. So if within a discussion, the CEO is looking to the CTO, for instance, for decisions, then you know exactly the structure on paper is not the structure reflected in real life. So that's what you do here in a graphical way. So in this example, it's very easy. Chris, 45, is the target person. He is focused on an 18-year-old Claire. Males are a square and the women are circles. Then he had an affair in 2014 with Tiffany, which is 20, married 99 with 44-year-old Alice. And he has a friend, Bob, who has PTSD, 45-year-old. The double lines references to that's a very strong connection. The wiggly lines means actually that Alice is a bit hostile towards Bob. So we do have now collected information which is then enriched with intelligence about the emotional relationships, and we can use that. So of course, very easy here. What kind of phishing emails would you send Chris? Very easy. Of course, young women would probably appeal to him, I guess. Or you can try to drive a wedge between Alice and Bob, or the other way around. So that will be also an angle you could play. So information becomes, how can I say that? Yeah, maybe sounds a bit, it becomes dangerous if you make intelligence out of it. But it depends what kind of intelligence you make out of it. You there see also a list with items from 1 to 6. That's what you actually are looking for with this so-called SER maps. You look for pattern recognition. Is this person drinking? What political views does this person have? Is he always going to the gym on Wednesday? Is he attending conferences live on Sundays, for instance? You look for out of character. You look for emotionally loaded areas, incongruencies in personal business life, strongly highly developed areas or underdeveloped areas. And all this information will give you an angle so you can make a perfect attack vector for social engineering. Of course, that's only done for very important tasks or very specific tasks and not in your daily life. In your daily life, you would apply the standard attack vectors. And for each of those attack vectors, there is a definition of how risky they are in terms of executing them. Now, I'm going really to bore you. I don't know if it's late at your place or early in the morning. I know it's unbearable to see such a picture, I guess. But this is actually, you will find a lot of checklists out there about social engineering, and they're all really good. So if you're interested in using social engineering as another business or means, instead of just pen testing, you will engage in social engineering tasks, for instance, and you want to engage on a corporate level, you need to have a certain methodology in place. Of course, you need to have that in place. So here is just really the complete overview of what processes you need to have in place and through how you work through these processes during your engagement, for instance. And I can just say the most important learnings I have throughout my professional life is risk management is paramount. And I think especially in information security. I will show you later a couple of examples how I wanted to actually defeat this, and this is about using intensity levels. But here it's really about seeing who is your customer, how do you engage with this customer. For instance, there are regulations like companies which are, for instance, blacklisted, and you should not work together with them. There are export restrictions, companies with those things. There are companies which have certain ties to bigger corporate companies, which you should probably not engage. I think it's really important, especially if you are maybe a startup company or a smaller company, that you go through these steps. Make it an easier version. I will show you just in a minute how you can do that. So here is the bare minimum. So you have processes which are pre-engagement before you actually engage with the customer. You have processes during the engagement. So during running your red teaming engagement, what do you do? What you have to consider, what you need to look for. And you have processes, of course, after post-engagement from this perspective. The most important one is here, there's actually just 4 processes. If you break it down to the bare minimum, just look at these 4 processes. So you have the client selection acquisition. You really check out your client, because what I figured out, I also have experienced myself, is if you're a smaller company, you tend to get some contracts or jobs, and you really should consider what the greater consequences of these jobs are. Sometimes, if I just say it straight out, you will be misused. You will be misused from some companies in terms of They want to use you maybe to get information on the competition, to slander their competition, and you're just a means to an end to get them this information they cannot obtain themselves. So you really need to be careful about that. This is the client selection and acquisition. You also have to say no to certain clients, of course. You want to engage with them. Second one is the scoping and approach. Make it perfectly clear how you engage with your client and what the specific risks are. There are good checklists out there, rules of engagement, etc. you can use and apply, but this is really important. Also, we have had these cases, which is so-called get out of jail letter, which the client tries to indemnify yourself and kind of approves the action you're taking. But in some cases, he cannot do that. For instance, in Switzerland and other companies as well, the reception desk is manned by a different company. So it's a different legal entity. So even if the client tells you whatever he wanted to tell you and wraps it in pink paper or what, he cannot take that risk away. So if you're breaching a different legal company, for instance, this company will come after you, because you have to think it of this way. This company, their reputation is based on they're doing a good job. So if their reputation is going around, oh, there have been breaches, so they have been social engineered, people are passing by, their badge hasn't been checked, there was tailgating and all these things, you ruin this company. So they will go after you really, really heavily. And they will do that because it doesn't matter. It's a different legal entity. So always try to keep in mind what are you doing and in what context. And of course, after that, you have deliverable and approach monitoring. So during the engagement, you have to constantly you have to constantly monitor the developments of the client and of your job. So what's happening with the client? Is he going into receivership? Is there some merger maybe out there? So you need to have an eye not only on the job, but also on the environment of your job. And of course, during the whole engagement, you have to check the risk assessment. What are you doing? If your attack vectors are working, you're changing the attack vectors, you need approval to change the attack vectors, etc., etc. I think this is really important. It's basic, it's boring, I know, but if you want to have a job in the long term and getting old and not being sent to prison, it's maybe a good thing you consider those methods and processes. Here's really quickly, I will skim over them. It's more like a documentation for yourself. What I just said, what you do then within this process group as a bare minimum, you check for these items. It gives you an idea what you can actually looking for. So you look at the workload and the consideration, you look at the skills match, etc. And I said, this is all based on the context of risk management and risk tolerance for corporations. They don't tolerate if you send something which doesn't have the skills. You will have big discussion. Also, they don't tolerate if you're accepting a big job and then you say, I don't have the resources, etc., etc. It's more about management, of course, than maybe just attack vector development. Well, we will cover this just after this section. Scoping approach selection is the same thing. This will just give you an idea about how you develop it and how you control it. And of course, these are different people. So you have people for the execution, which are executing your attack vectors, which are doing the social engineering tasks. You might have a project manager and a client representative, and also you have your management. And all of them play an essential part in having a successful social engineering or red teaming attack. This is the last process from this group, so we can now proceed to the more interesting bits, I guess. So now I wanted to look with you at the attack vector development. How do you develop an attack vector? I think the basic for this attack vector development is you wanted to develop your attack vectors. You are creating a database of them, hopefully, and you can reuse them at your next engagement. Or also, what is really crucial at the corporate level, if you do some testing within one country, you do have to do the same testing in the other country, or you do have to do the same testing if you are coming back a year later. So you need to know, how did I have done this test? What were the results? Were there any changes? And you have to test in the same way. Otherwise, the results are not comparable. So that's the most important part about attack vectors, documenting the attack vectors and having them ready. So we can reuse them and always apply the same methodology, not of course to get the same results, but to get the same setting for the testing correct. So on this little graphic, you see how you actually start with an attack vector at the very high level. That's like a 20,000 foot view. It's information collection, of course. You will collect information. You can decide either you buy the information of the market or you create the information yourselves. You are collecting information yourselves. Then for some of the things are maybe just, you can always cut out some steps which are not important to you. This has just become quite extensive because we had to cover so many risks and we had to do so many engagements. So that's basically a dump of the experience we made, which became important. Buying is rather a passive process, and if you're making information, it's passive or could be active. It depends. And then, of course, you can use different means for this information collection: signal intelligence, OS intelligence, etc., etc. The information, of course, you document. And then very important, either it's fact-based documentation or intelligence-based. What do I mean by that? So fact-based is if you take the information and document it. Intelligence-based information is basically information which then has been enriched by a person, maybe a psychologist, who makes a statement about person XYZ has these attributes or is reacting to this or maybe has these problems, etc. So that's intelligence-based information. It becomes then important if the shit hits the fan, for instance, and you need to have a fact check or you do a review of the engagement or of the task you have been doing, and you're looking back and you want to know why did we came to the conclusion at this time. And then it was fact-based. Back then we had an interpretation of the situation or of the data like this, and that's how we came about it. So that's only for very specific purposes. Then you develop the attack vector. You select it based on the time you have, based on the success factors you have, etc. And then you go into the approach. So of course, attack vectors made for Christmas or COVID doesn't work when COVID is over or something else is coming, or if it's Easter. Then you're, a long way from Christmas phishing emails, for instance. And then you exploit, of course. Further down the line, when you go into the process of the attack vector itself, you decide the type of attack vector. Is it person-based, physical, sending someone in, talking someone, or is it technology-based cyber? Then, in the middle, the next box is basically the principle. What is your attack vector based on? And that's something you will have in your company, maybe people which do not really like to engage with the clients or don't want to travel, etc., etc. So, but you will have people within your organization which are exceptionally well at this type of work. They can work out the details, the principles. So it's a teamwork developing great attack vectors. It's not like a single person does it. So you select the principle which you see the time-based, you put them under pressure, you're using authority, it's like CEO fraud, you use scarcity, it's limited edition, it's only available until, etc., etc. You decide what principle you are using, and then also, of course, you're using what information is available. The beliefs, the emotional, financial, of course, the culture comes in. Should we really send emails or phishing emails based on this, or is that maybe just too high risk, for instance, for our reputation? Then, as in normal project management, you have constraints. You have the time, duration, and time of attack, how much money is there available, the budget, within which time frame these attack vectors need to be defined. The chances of success, if you have a database of your attack vectors you previously have used, you will have also marked them how successfully they are. Or if you're, for instance, buying or using professional phishing software, in there sometimes, I think I have seen at least 3 of them, which have like this little flag, chance of success or success and the percentage, how successful this attack vector was maybe in the past. But if you're doing it yourself, you also will map this out after a while using which phishing email or attack vector had a good chance of success. Then also, of course, who is available within your company to execute this, the skills, and also the socio-economic perspective. Should you do it? Should you not do it? Is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate, etc. Then down comes the most important bit, is the intensity levels. I will show you that just in a minute. And governance, risk, compliance, we will skip that for today. That's probably too much of a theory to apply for your practical use, I guess. But these are the boundaries. You should stay within your boundaries, and you should clearly communicate with your client what the boundaries are. So it was quite interesting when I was preparing for the conference today. I was digging out some previous work, and I thought I will show you this one. That was 3 years ago. An attack vector I used. It was only executed locally. Today would be absolutely impossible to use that one. And also we haven't been using it because it was too high in the intensity level. So this attack vector was basically a clipboard, as you can see. It was used with sticky tape to a wall in the bathroom. And the letter says, it's actually a copy of the World Health Organization. It's about hand washing. quite macabre for today's means. So, and it was basically, we contaminated the bathroom stall doors with UV powder, and also, of course, the taps. And then there was a little hint with this UV lamp. You can then check basically if your hands are clear or not, and if you want to wash them. And really the idea was basically, it was baiting, and baiting was done by, okay, we wanted to go make them click on this link, which is here, log in. And of course, the basic means was to confuse them and maybe scare them a little bit. That's also why we kind of then didn't use that attack vector. Although with the people I tried it, it worked fantastically. So here you see a picture with the UV lamp actually then highlighting your hand. And of course, everybody's hand would light up under the UV light, because everyone was using the toilet room stall doors, the knobs, right? Because the knobs we prepared. I will show you that on the next picture. So here you see the letter again, this batch thingies, then the UV lamp for testing, a little pencil, and here the UV fluids. It's actually based on a kit for testing how viruses spread. And this is ink, UV ink, and this is the UV powder. So that's the whole setup of this attack vector. And of course, here you think, yeah, it's great. It works great, as a matter of fact, but it's just too risky. You can freak out people, you can, get them into a tantrum, whatever. So we disposed of that one. But just that one would be you would be totally insane if you would launch something like this today, because, I mean, of course, success rate would be quite high. But at what price, right? So let's go further. Intensity levels. And since I'm here and being able talking to you and actually having quite fun with that, I have to say I always was lucky so far, but also I was always quite careful in executing my tasks, in executing the projects I did. And I was working in many places around the world. I was in Australia for a couple of years, in China as well, the US. And there were situations which you really need to think of, what are you doing and what are the risks. And it really depends on your experience, or maybe on the experience of your team or your team leader in what tasks you engage. And there is, and you will see tasks which might not appear right. So stay away from this, because you might want to keep your security clearance, or you might want to get one in the future, or you want just to be having the freedom of working from home and not from another place. Here we just made a little chart, basically like a traffic light chart, where we have each attack vector listed in terms of what it means for risk management. Of course, green is good. Orange is somewhat good if you have to. Red you should stay away from, and black ones, don't do them. It's not worth the risk. It's totally unnecessary in a corporate setting. It's maybe for curiosity or some other things there. So you actually take each attack vector and you rate it against these intensity levels. And then also you discuss this with your client. I did have clients when I was doing phishing initiatives, for instance, where I did have to apply this table because we did phishing, couple of thousand people all around the world, etc., etc. We figured out some interesting connections. We figured out, for instance, they had developers in Thailand. And when we discussed the phishing emails and the reporting and the geolocation of opening of the phishing emails, of course, we figured out, there's someone opened the email in Thailand. And then we looked, okay, what is it? Where is it? How could that be? Was it forwarded, etc.? We don't have any staff in Thailand. But then all of a sudden, the CIO raised his hand and said, I have a developer down there. And that was an interesting discussion to have. So I think it's important always to make sure you look at the intensity levels and what do they mean, and benchmark yourself or your company or the job you are doing against some kind of ethics, whatever it is. So what do I mean? Here is the chart with the risk appetite or the possible consequences. It's very easy. If it's legal, non-invasive, OSINT, green, just go. No approval necessary. Simple, local or national, just go and do it. If you are preserving a person or a company's integrity, then it's also okay. But if you're maybe compromising a person's integrity in the work you do, because maybe you're phishing and say, yeah, this person clicked first and those guys in South America are always the worst or whatever, be very careful what you're doing there. So then it's no longer green level. Orange level is maybe your attack vector is invasive, intrusive, medium complexity, it's a well-known corporation, ethically questionable, or it's a misdemeanor. And you can check this with some of the actions clients asking you. So check them with legal, with your team leader, with whoever, with the internet. So what is the task you're asked to do in terms of what could it mean? And always in information security, if you look how people get charged, it's always some kind of strange law with the Telecommunication Act and whatever, and it can be really bad. So for instance, especially maybe younger ones which are entering into social engineering tactics or work, they think, okay, like I build now my own identity, do now like a documentation and maybe make, just change a picture of a driving license or so on. It's not a big deal. So it really sometimes is a big deal. So it's falsification of documents, and that can be a felony, or it's no longer a misdemeanor. So always be very careful in what you are engaging, because from a business perspective and a personal perspective, it's not worth it. I use this table to discuss what the client wants. He wants to have a phishing email done. He wants to have maybe penetration testing done with exploiting, and maybe some social engineering on a personal basis, like trying to obtain additional information. I always use this table and say, look, what you are asking me is orange. I can do it. Or if I have a task which is maybe orange on the border to red, I just deny. I say, sorry, I can't do it. I do outsource it. You have to go to another company, or I am using another company to execute orange tasks for me because I want to stay in the green. It really depends. It's a management question. So just checking the time. Probably have to speed up a bit here. Let's see what I have else for you. You will get these slides. I think you will get the videos, all that stuff, of course. And then I'll just quickly show you what else is there from a social engineering perspective, what you're actually looking for with a practical background. So there I just have knowledge of a certain report from a team, Duplicity, with Olivia Dunham and Chuck Finley. They were at DEFCON 22, had assigned a target, and actually went to the conference. A part of SECTF, social engineering capture the flag, is you capture the flag, but from a social engineering perspective. So here you can see a little view of what these flags are. And as I said in the beginning, all information is relevant. Even the smallest bit of information is relevant. As with other tools you have in your network, like you did have maybe an intrusion from an IP address or a connection from an IP address. 3 months later, you have another one. I have forgotten what I had for lunch yesterday. So people are fallible, systems not. So with social engineering, it's the same. You collect all this information. If I have given out my phone number maybe today and giving out my postcode next week, I will totally not correlate this. So that's what social engineering is doing in the background as well. So you're collecting these flags, that's from the report, but then also you decide what this information means. And we as a team then, I was with a fantastic woman in information security back then, teaming up with her, and it was just great. We had a fantastic time. We came up with this little scheme here. So we do have notable events, which is like, okay, you could do something out of it, but it's maybe not per such a risk. Then we had an attack vector, a real attack vector defined, if the information could be actually executed and used. And also we found, of course, disastrous information or bits of information. Then the whole report was basically based on of this information, which is actually fantastic. So my blackout bar just moved down. Fantastic. Lovely. I love that. But it's 6 years ago. So we then had information and actually looked at it. We discovered it. What is the issue with it? What is the impact with it? And how can you mitigate it? So we did this with all the information we could find. And we did actually compile over 100 pages report on what could be found just from public information without actively hacking or entering the customer systems. Information is everywhere. I just mentioned that. So we could use information from oversharing on Foursquare. Based on this information, we could see the type of operating system used, the type of hardware which has been used. Then on a client event, there were pictures shared. We could identify how their badge looks. That's with a low res. I have a high res picture of that one. So we could actually would be able to reprint their badge, which brought us through the first area, I guess. Then we found, of course, all kinds of social media pictures. We would then correlate with the people which have taken them or which people are on this picture, which then subsequently also could be used as an attack vector for further exploitation, I guess. So information is everywhere. Oversharing is a big problem. If information becomes a risk or not, that depends to be determined. But I think as a social engineer, it's our tasks to find these vulnerabilities of people or through people, and then also highlight them to the business, improve security, improve the security posture of the business. And I think definitely now, today, where the world has become really complicated, I do think we need to help each other and everyone. With all this phishing emails going around now, COVID, with all these applications, people are for the first time being online, maybe work from home, etc., etc. I think that was my little contribution for the IsolationCon. Fantastic event. So I thank you really much for this one. And I would like to take now some questions or comments. I just need to see if I can find the appropriate channel for this. I can see some of the questions.
I'll present the questions to you.
All right. Fantastic. Lovely.
Great talk, by the way.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm looking in the chat. Does anyone have any questions?
I think actually Reg just kind of hit me up and said we're out of time. So we're just outside the cyber bunker, and we have to say goodbye to Dom. Thank you so much. It was an amazing talk. And I think now we just go to a quick break, and we'll be back with Cyber Viking.